it's only got sustainability implications come from the Devon, adopted Devon Waste Local Plan, so it covers the whole of Devon County, or at least the bits outside Plymouth and Torquay. They require a waste audit statement for new developments, and the waste audit statement has to be submitted with the planning application, basically identifying how construction and demolition waste and operational waste are reduced to a minimum, and how unavoidable waste will be reused on site, recycled or stored for segregation. In practice, what it means is, if you're going to demolish a building, you make sure that the demolition rubble isn't shipped off and then you ship something else in to raise the land levels. You actually use the same material. You use existing buildings where they are on site without having to sort of knock that one down and build a new one. It's very much about reducing waste through the demolition and construction phases of the process. Again, a requirement for, I think it's schemes of 10 or more houses, they need to demonstrate how they've taken these principles on board. The North Devon, or North Devon and Torridge, are unique in this country for having a new style UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. A Biosphere Reserve basically covers the whole of North Devon district and a large part of Torridge district, which are Bideford, Great Torrington, Hartland. I think it's most of Torridge apart from Holsworthy. It's centred around Braunton Burrows, which is an important sand dune system. That is very much a international designation, just don't touch, don't even think of doing anything there. But around it there is a buffer zone and a transition zone which will cover the rest of the district. The policies relating to the Biosphere Reserve is that it's to demonstrate how the environment can be, how people can live in the environment sustainably. So it's what does take place needs to be sustainable, either enhancing or supporting the natural environment. And certainly the natural environment is shaping what development does take place. The biosphere transition zones around it should be an exemplar for a sustainable development. So we should be effectively a world-class exemplar to show what can be achieved. But it also means that we are able to show innovative ways of achieving that. So it is like a sort of a test case to some extent. And this is what we're arguing, or going to be arguing, is one of the reasons why we can justify higher standards, particularly building standards, than may be allowed elsewhere in the country. So if the government has got, you will meet building regs and don't ask for anything else, we're going to try and use it to justify why you should achieve at least code level 1, 2, 3, whatever it is in this area, because although it's one way of showing development meeting sustainable principles within the Biosphere Reserve. It hasn't gone to an application, it hasn't gone to any inquiry, but that's the grounds that we're working on. It's making North Devon, or North Devon and Torridge, using its sort of uniqueness and its designations to justify a departure from the normal standards, get it a bit greener than it would have been. We're aware of it, we've got it, but whether we use it, it's hard to know because we're not quite sure what we're supposed to do with it.
Protect biodiversity.
Yes, protect biodiversity, but it tells you the designations, it doesn't actually tell you how to protect them. We know where the designations are and we know we're going to protect the designations, but how do you enhance or increase these things, particularly where planning permission isn't needed to do it? It's something we're working on, but yeah.
My understanding of it is the fact that you use it, that if they designated that area and it's got certain other qualifications backing up behind a certain map, then obviously you try to restrict where possible any planning within those areas, and you build within the non-designated areas.
Oh yeah, well, certainly we would always try and put any new development outside the designated landscape or designated wildlife areas or biodiversity habitats. The key is that where, for example, you've got, I think one of the strategic nature maps habitats is woodland. It's fine to say, well, we will protect the woodlands. What you need to do is somehow link them together. And it's how do you use the land management, how do you contact the landowners to try and create much more enhancement of the habitats, and also increasing the sort of the corridors between the habitats, particularly where something doesn't need planning permission in the first place.
That comes more through stewardship schemes.
Yeah, it could be, but that's outside the control of the council, yeah. Therefore it's not something we can directly influence. Yeah. There is a duty on public authorities to show that we are enhancing biodiversity, but how you actually do that, we can do it within a housing development. You keep the hedgerows or enhance them, plant this corner, for wildflowers, whatever it might be, but how do we actually use development to enhance biodiversity outside of the planning system is
some councils have used it in the respect that they've given planning permission, but the developer that's going to develop, if they either come within the buffer zone within those areas, they're told that you're allowed to build there, but you must, where possible, either produce a new eco network or part of the corridor or whatever to link further areas. So their footprint on biodiversity will take over a certain amount, but then they will have to either match or exceed that by joining up other areas to extend the biodiversity, not necessarily where they are, but to try and do it in an area then that obviously would then increase biodiversity, not necessarily directly on the site.
Yeah, these are all options that we're looking at through the core strategy. Yeah, how to actually improve biodiversity. One, you could say, well, biodiversity is a real constraint. Just sort of keep off. Don't go near any designation of anything of any value. Another one is to try and, well, where you've got, for example, a site that would otherwise be suitable. If you're losing a pond, well, yeah, provide a bigger and better pond somewhere else outside the site. Another one is, what option is to try and somehow enhance biodiversity corridors through the site by virtue of the site layout and design to try and enhance the wider picture. You're still providing the housing, but if you've got some of the habitat and some of the corridors enhanced through a development, the idea is to try and have the best of both. But it is options at this stage, and we haven't really got the detailed policies in practice. We know it's something we need to do, we just haven't got there. Nearly there. Yeah, so the Biosphere Reserve is certainly a local justification for trying to raise standards, but it's not as yet tested. The core strategy which I mentioned, we've got a number of questions that we're asking the people. We've identified key issues. We're saying, what do you think some of the options are? Or what do you think is the best option? For example, question 21, how should we optimise affordable housing provision? We've got two options. One, maximise it, so basically get as many affordable dwellings as we can. Or two, prioritise the provision, which is maybe provide the types that we need most, albeit you may not get so many of them. So providing maximum is going to be, generally, lots of one-bedroom flats, I imagine, whereas prioritise may be more 2- and 3-bed family houses, which may be a greater political priority, but in viability terms, you're not going to get so many. We're asking which is the right approach. Again, there's no correct answer here. Different people have different views. Other questions, how should we facilitate affordable housing to meet local needs in rural areas? We can rely purely on exception sites. That is saying, outside the development boundary where we wouldn't normally allow housing, we'll put them there. The land's worth little because it's outside the boundary. We just wouldn't allow housing, so it's almost agricultural land values. We could say grant-free affordable housing. In other words, going on the 25 or 35%, we just rely on the developer to give a proportion of their site for affordable housing. Or a grant-led approach, saying that we will try and incorporate public subsidy into these different sites, but there's only so much public subsidy to go round, and once you've used it, you've used it. Different approaches will achieve different things in different areas. It could be a combination of the three, but which is the approach we should tackle? Because there's only so many of us to go round to actually do it, and there's only so much money to go round. Depending on which options are picked, it may also affect which of the settlements the development may go in. And I say a final question we've got is, to what extent should future development optimise opportunities for sustainable design and construction? I think I know what you're going to prefer here, but one, a staged approach to enhanced eco standards. Basically, we'll follow building regs as they slowly get better. Two, progress on sustainable design and construction within the context of our regeneration priorities. In other words, we'll try and get a bit more, but we've got to look at viability, and we will have other priorities, particularly regeneration. In other words, we're not going to ask for something if it's going to undermine viability. And three, promote innovative and exemplary design requirements for all developments to optimise reductions in carbon emissions. In other words, go the full way and actually try and get as much carbon neutral or as low carbon development